Oh, I forgot to change the dang media stuff. Hold on a second. We're recording, but let me just switch all this stuff around. Noticed it as I was about to announce the Pick 6 podcast, and there's no Pick 6 things. Okay. All right, and scene. Let me get into character. All right.
Did we reinforce the takeoff ramp? No, we didn't have time. Cool. Oh, shit.
Welcome back for another episode of the Pick 6 podcast. I am joined by Dennis DPZ. He's pulled off of the side of the road, and there is some feedback when I'm talking on his side, and so that's why he is on mute while I'm talking. So you can see this is a high-profile studio. This is high production stuff. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us today, guys. We've got a Wembanyama injury that is shaking the NBA, as well as a lot of people that have serious dough. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars that are in Wemby cards right now that people are probably trying to figure out what do I do now? So, and then I guess the other part of this episode that we're going to talk about, does this mean more of a flight to the GOATs, more of a flight to the Michael Jordans and the Kobes and the LeBrons, which frankly already have a lot of money in those markets, but does it spook people to just say, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to go, as we were talking about, Dennis, kind of going back to the last episode or the one before, kind of anchoring your collection in those players. Do people go like, all right, screw it. I'm not doing any more, I'm not going 50-50, like 50% GOATs, 50% prospect type players like a Wembanyama. Now I'm going 90-10 or something. Are we going now to like, more of a conservative approach? So Dennis, good to see you. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, I'm not a Wembanyama collector. We talked about this a few months ago. Not somebody that I've bought any of his cards. So I'm not somebody who invests in him. But I think it's sort of a warning shot, or a healthy warning that any of these players that are playing right now, especially the amount of money you're spending to buy these cards, everything's baked into them. Whereas if you're buying cards of people that have already retired, their legacy is intact. Of course, you have to always be mindful of what kind of personal lives they have, but they're pretty much sure bets on what they're going to do and what they're not going to do as far as their legacy, or how their legacy is going to be viewed and all that. Other players coming up and breaking records and things of that nature might diminish it a little, but ultimately that's already done. You do have to think about, I think anyway, finding the right card for these players. And unfortunately, if even the right card for a Wemby is going to be very, very pricey, and you're going to have to pay up to get a card like that, which means you're going to be exposed. And it's really not easy to get in. There's no point of entry that, I guess there might be, but it's hard to find that point of entry with some of these players that are prospects. And then the population of the cards that are being created, other than like the one-of-ones and things of that nature, are really they're hard to find. There isn't as much of a window there, but it's exciting. That's the problem. Like, people want, they want to root on a current player. They want to have some skin in the game when they're watching this player play, or you're watching an NBA game and you love seeing the values go up when a player does really well. I bet you all the Shohei Ohtani guys and gals that were holding those cards before he really broke out a couple years ago were really happy they still had a bunch of Shohei Ohtani. 2020 and 2019, he wasn't so bad to get.
And he went through his own injuries.
Right. So there was opportunity. There was actually a great opportunity when he was hurt to pick up a lot of his cards. So I guess that's another angle of this you can look at is, all right, he's hurt. People might be bailing on him. Maybe now is a chance to get him because he's hurt and he's going to come back. And is there an opportunity? I don't think that'll happen, though. I think with people like, and especially in the basketball world, I think that there's more of a diamond hand component to the investor, the collector, whatever you want to call them, where they hold on to these players through injuries, through down years, through dips and valleys, in anticipation that it's going to eventually level out or it's going to come back. And so they don't have to go back and buy it. And I think a lot of us like to buy cards and then sell them and buy them back. I do it all the time, probably way more than I should. So, let's avoid all that business and just keep the card. But it's just more exciting, and I can see why people do it. So I have nothing against folks that want to do that. It's fun. I would rather spend money on players that are retired. But I think flight to quality, that's becoming a difficult thing to talk about now. A lot of
And
these
also,
Jordan
like,
cards.
yeah,
What's that?
and a flight to quality can bite you a little bit. In this instance, when we look at like prospecting quality, when we're looking at Wembanyama quality, there's a lot of risk. If you bought the $10,000 Wemby card, you might be thinking, oh my God, like this might be a $5,000 card, in a couple of months. And I wonder too, how many people are going to be spooked, but they're like, you know what? I spent 10 and now maybe it's selling at 6 or 7, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to kind of play this game a little bit to maybe get some good news, like he's coming back next season, but they're still spooked though. So they're basically like, hey, I don't want to take a $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000 loss, but right before the next season, when he's coming back, I'm selling out. I'm getting out because I don't want to risk, next season, something weird happens. And people we already have people that are talking like this is a Chris Bosh injury that ended Chris Bosh's career. Some people are talking about Greg Oden, which granted different injuries with Greg Oden. With the whole Zion fiasco, Zion Williamson coming in with his weight and he had knee injury, all the ups and downs of Zion Williamson. And now it's really kind of cratered if you look across the board, even though, he's playing or whatever. Like now that this thing's all evened out, people have basically bailed on Zion. So Wemby will be a really interesting one, because right now there's, like you mentioned, Dennis, there's going to be diamond hands that are, one, they want to see if he can come back, but two, they also might be like the card prices might fall and they don't want to take that hit right now.
Yeah, I think those are some good points. Those are some really good points. If you're starting to look at other players and how they got hurt, and if it's a similar injury, I could see there being a healthy concern for his ability to come back. Now, if I wouldn't sell right now. I'd obviously wait to sell right before next season, capitalize on that seasonality of selling. But this is just the danger. You never know. You spend all that money, and what if this ends his career? What if this is just let's call it career limiting? He's not able to really live up to what we thought he was going to be, and any player in that you use that player in any scenario, and they're not able to fulfill the expectations that are baked into the value of their cards. It's a scary thought, and it's one of the reasons why I steer clear. Because like if you're gonna, I'd rather take that $10,000 and go buy a very relevant, card from the '90s that is probably. That it has they aren't going to make any more of them. If you do it right, you could, grow that money with the type of card you want to buy, if that's what your intention is. I was saying earlier, I think that window's closing on the '90s. Like I'm going into Ray Allen now because he's affordable. You can get some pretty cool cards of his for affordable prices. Whereas, you could spend $500 on a really cool card that would cost you $10,000 to $12,000 of Michael Jordan or Kobe. That's attractive to me right now. So, unless you have a big wallet where you can just go buy you're paying way more for some of those cards now. And so I think that window is shrinking a bit. So if there is more people running to the nines, that makes me nervous because I'm like, there's still some cards I want to get. I kind of feel like I'm sounding like some of the people I used to listen to back in the day, like, oh, don't come here and you're going to just drive up the prices. But that's what's happening. There's a lot of cards that are selling for more, not just Michael Jordan, lots of different 90s cards and sets and players, football, baseball, basketball, all of it. So that makes, I think that that's also one of the reasons why it's such a great era to collect in. It's limited. And so there's only so many to go around, and there's only so many sets that everybody covets. Now, is there an opportunity for other sets that may not have been on the radar to grow and become more relevant now that, some of the other sets are bought up? Because I know for a fact a lot of the cards I have right now, I'm not selling them. I'm keeping a lot of these. I don't want, because I'll never get it back. And so when you have enough people saying that, now that supply dries up. And so, I think a mentality of wanting to go back and get something that's more, not safe, but just more stable is attractive. But then you have to weigh that with the excitement of owning something that it's almost like you're betting on that player, and it's like fantasy sports, right? It's betting meeting fantasy sports. So that's exciting. I understand the sentiment. So I guess I can see it both ways, but I'm also I'd be cautious about going into the 90s because it's just there's so much to learn. You got to learn a lot. There are opportunities, but you really have to dig in and do your due diligence and learn. Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff I'm noticing you're not seeing it anymore. So
I'm curious, as you mentioned, I'm curious to see what happens here if there is a shift of money into just more active players, like what we were talking about. Is it going to go over to, I don't know, John Moran, or is it going to go over to, some of these newer players, Anthony Edwards, Ant-Man? I got a comment on my video today. I told you, Anthony Edwards, that's where you should be. It's like maybe you're right. Or Jokic. I know Chris Hoge is a big Jokic guy, most efficient player in basketball. He's a big man. Maybe, hey, you put money into one big man, Wemby. Maybe you flip it over into Jokic. But kind of to your point, there's such a heavy emphasis on 90s inserts and parallels, and that, the money flow into that world has been tremendous over the last few years. If you want a big man, do you go back in time a little bit more? Do you go back to 57 Topps Bill Russell rookie, or early, or do you go to 61 Fleer Wilt Chamberlain rookies? I haven't been tracking what those look like, but hell, I'm sure $7 to $10 probably buys you a pretty decent copy of either one of those cards. Not necessarily in a one or something. And I don't know. Again, when we're talking about anchoring, if you're a basketball card collector, those are a couple nice options, I would think.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because the 80s would be a great place to look next, right? But there's just so many, and the grades driving all of that, right? The grades driving everything in the 80s.
Yeah.
There's no ifs and ands and buts about it. It's the grade. It's PSA 10. And if you can't get a PSA 10 in the 80s, then you're laughing. So I wouldn't say there because there's just too many. I think you're right. I think people do one of two things. If you're a Wemby guy right now and you have a lot of his cards, maybe you go look to the future. Okay, who's coming up next? That Duke player. I don't even know his name.
Oh yeah, Flag.
Cooper Flag at the Cooper Flag. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah. Him, or do you start thinking about, all right, some of these third or fourth year players, fifth or sixth year players, like a John Morant or an SGA, or there's other players out there, or maybe do you go, hey, these players that are at the end of their careers, but they're like Hall of Famers, the Kevin Durant's. Do we look at a guy like LeBron James? Do you start really getting into LeBron, or his price is right because everybody's kind of tired of LeBron right now? But he's still an all-time great. He's a top 5 player all time. How do you not, he's just tremendous opportunity there. But then again, he's still very expensive, right? So it's really tough.
I have a theory with, and I'm going to use two guys as an example, LeBron and Steph Curry. So those are two guys, when you think about like this last generation, they're still playing, and they're still playing at a pretty high level. I think that 1 to 3 years post-retirement, I think that's really kind of the money spot. Meaning like, and I saw this with Drew Brees. Like Drew Brees was a guy when he was playing, he could still maybe win a Super Bowl. Prices were if I compare to where they have been over the last couple of years since he retired to where they were in his last seasons, kind of those last couple of seasons, they've dropped really dramatically, which has been great for me to be able to pick them up at a good price. But if I'm looking at Curry and LeBron have solidified themselves as all-time greats, those two players in particular, but they're still active players, are still relevant, and they're still playing at a high level. You almost need LeBron to be like in the dumps, averaging 8 points a game, like he's on one leg, like this guy, like you need to see some some more downside to him because he's still playing well, even though he's 100 years old. We need to get past the point, I feel like, for LeBron. If I don't own one LeBron card, but if I was going to put some serious money into LeBron, not financial advice, do whatever you want, but I would be waiting seriously like 1 to 3 years after retirement. Everyone will move on. Like these guys, it'll be like the next crop of players. You don't see them on TV. Maybe LeBron does commercials and stuff, but for the most part, it's moving on to the next gen of superstars, out of sight, out of mind. And I feel like that is really going to be the time because it's also not coming up on like their Hall of Fame induction yet. It's still kind of in that window where, there's still years to go before they'll be first ballot Hall of Famers, obviously, but they should be kind of out of the limelight for a while. I think that's going to really be kind of the buy zone for a lot of those guys.
For the big guys, yeah, I think you're right. That's a good time to jump in. I think right now, and I don't want to say this because I'm kind of into collecting players like this, or at least this player, Ray Allen. he's a top 75 player, but he's not, he's not Michael Jordan. He's not Kobe. He doesn't have a huge hobby following. He's decent, but so you can still collect a guy like that with some of his really cool cards at a decent, without having to, spend an arm and a leg. And I think there are other players like that, like is there a Charles Barkley? Like you put together a Charles Barkley collection. I know his 90s are pretty expensive though, but maybe Reggie Miller or John Stockton or some of the players that have like retired they're kind of from that 90s era anyway, like Penny Hardaway or Allen Iverson. There are a lot of like opportunities to collect if you're a basketball guy and you grew up in that, I'm assuming, most of us kind of grew up in that era of those players that were really great players that we really enjoyed, but they're not like, they don't have massive collector bases, but they still are in a lot of those really cool sets. I mean, start looking at that's just what I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to go look at some of these cool insert sets. Some of these, like, because a lot of them have the credentials, they have all these cards, but go look at some of those cards and the sets and find out who's in them, and then start noticing what player is in a lot of those sets. And if there's a player that you remember playing that you thought was cool, like all of us remember those guys' names I just listed off. I mean, I'd say Shaq, but Shaq's already got a pretty big following, and his cards are pretty expensive. I lean more towards these like second tier players, like a Steve Nash. Players like that. I mean, they're in a lot of these cool sets, and outside of the PMGs and the cards that are everybody's expensive, there's a lot of cool sets out there where you can get like the credentials, the 96 credentials. There's a lot of players that have that credentials card. It's out of $4.99. I know it's not a lot, but you can get a pretty cool player for like probably $500 in a high grade. That's a really cool card, and it's like an iconic set. Yeah, stuff like that. Like that's kind of where I'm at, because I'm like, this would be fun. I know they're not super collected, but they're still Hall of Famers. They're still all-time greats. But with basketball, there's just there's like top 5, top 10, whatever. And even within that top 10, they're not all super collected. So that to me is where I zig or zag or whatever you want to call it right now. Because like I said earlier, I think a lot of the Jordans and the Kobes and some of these bigger players, and LeBrons even, you're priced out of their best stuff. There's no way you're going to touch it unless you mortgage your whole collection. So it's fun to collect. Here's another thing. I've been doing this recently too. Early Topps Chrome, like go like 98 through 2003, 2004, 2005. Maybe some Finest. Get some of those cool refractors, X-fractors, gold refractors. Get them in high grades of all these players, and they may not be super valuable. I mean, you can get it for a couple $100 and a PSA 10, and they look amazing. It's their like the 03 Topps Chrome set's pretty cool. I just recently picked up all Ray Allen's. I got the whole, because he doesn't have a super fractor in that set, so I got all the black, the refractor, the X-fractor, and the gold. And it didn't cost very much. I think it's like $500 to get all of them. But they're cool. A 2003 is a cool set. Those are the kind of things I'm doing. It's fun. You can actually start collecting and building out, as opposed to having to sell cards to buy cards. That's been kind of the, I still do a little bit of that, but it's been fun to just truly collect and get engaged in these sets. And another cool thing about that, I'm geeking out a little bit here, but you can learn more about the sets. Go into Cardboard Connection and read about the set. Look through the checklist. Learn about what was the first time the X-fractor came out. When's the first time the gold refractor was presented? I mean, obviously we know the gold refractor when that was presented, but were these debuts for all these really cool sets and different parallels and refractors. It's a blast. Like you do that through your research to buy, and you think about how you want to go correct. I want to do a gold run of this player. Topps Chrome, or I want a Finest round of this, lots of different ways to do it to have fun. So you could basically build out a 200 or 300 card slab collection of all this kind of stuff, or you can buy one Wemby. That's where I'm at.
That's a really good point. I like too how you mix kind of like a top 75 player or top 100 player all time with an important set, with an important card within the set, whether it's a 1-of-1 or a gold medallion or whatever that card is. So you're kind of like checking boxes, and like you said, like Ray Allen, he's not necessarily like as hobby relevant as a lot of other players. Just like I collect Drew Brees, it's kind of the same story. Like everyone wants Drake May. Like Drew Brees is an old man loser, like nobody cares about him anymore, but that's great for me because I can get like at a fraction of what like Justin Herbert cards cost, I can get an all-time great, with Breeze. Ray Allen, similar story. He's an all-time great, And hell, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Wembanyama. Maybe he'll play 15 years. Maybe he's got a couple, he kind of bungles through a few years and unfortunately is never the same guy. Like, we just don't know how it's going to go. I thought at first when I heard it that it was just kind of like a shoulder injury. Maybe it was like an AC joint or something, or, like rotator cuff. It was kind of when I saw it, when I heard shoulder. But then, I heard that it was blood clots or related to blood clots. And then as I listened to more and more people kind of talking about it and going over it, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but it just sounded to me like it could be a lot more serious than just a sprained joint or something like that. And it has nothing to do even with his ability to rehab it. Cause that's always the thing too. It's like, oh, well, maybe they just rehab it properly or diet, exercise your way through an injury. This isn't really like that. It's like you're taking blood thinners or whatever. And like, it's hit or miss. Like, it might be something that you just recover from, or it might not be. And that's pretty scary, especially when you're dumping huge money. Just think about too. I mean, my God, this is like the face of the Topps Fanatics basketball new product. They don't have the licenses yet. Think of all the product that has been sold on the back of Victor Wembanyama, whether it be the Mercury set with the Comet ad, the Comet coming out of the sky, the unlicensed Topps Chrome because they've got the exclusive autograph deal. I mean, this is a huge, massive deal, and the amount of money that's spent on these Prism parallel rookies, I mean, it's insane. We are talking, it's not an exaggeration. It's in the millions of dollars when you look at it, like, easy. I mean, easy. I think, what did his Black Finite 1 of 1 go for? I think it was $1 million. Like, wasn't it like in that?
Yeah,
world?
It was a lot. But here's the thing you got to remember. There'll be another Wemby, just like there was another Zion, and there was another. Right. There's always another guy. There's a Luka. Back in the day, it was Shaq. Then it was Derek Coleman. And remember, when we were younger, all the players, right? It was. There's always there's always a new batch of players. It just keeps going on and on. It repeats and recycle. But you got to ask yourself if you are into doing that and buying the new player and getting into that. If you want to collect cards, I guess, think about, go review the list of the top 75 players of all time. Try to find some players that at least played in an era that you really watched and participated in with the NBA. And whether you're a kid or growing up, high school, whatever, for me, it's going to be the 90s, right? Because that's when I was in middle school and high school, and I was watching a lot of basketball and a lot of baseball and a lot of hockey and football, mostly the top three there. And so I'm like, all the players resonate with me, and lots of them do, not just one. I've loved David Robinson. Ray Allen, I always thought was really cool. I mean, I watched him play in Seattle when he played in Seattle. I went to a lot of home games and watched him live in person. I never watched David Robinson live in person. I never watched Kobe or Michael Jordan. I watched Griffey and I watched Ray Allen. So I was kind of, why don't I start a Ray Allen class? That'd be kind of fun. I was inspired by it. This great guy, Sal, has cool cards. If you haven't checked him out, you should go check him out. He actually inspired me on one of his podcasts.
I always think of it, not to cut you off, hold that thought, but with Ray Allen, I always think of his corner three with the Heat. That corner three, I don't remember what it was, like game 6 or one of these really, but basically, like, if he doesn't make the shot, I don't think they win the title. I can't remember exactly the
it was yeah, he was at the Heat, and that basically won them the game, and that won them the title, and that was it. Yeah, the biggest clutches, the most clutch 3-pointer, the most clutch shot probably in NBA Finals history. That's what a lot of people think. But yeah, I mean, he got game. He's kind of has that. His personality is super dry, so that's why he didn't really translate as well. He's not cool like Griffey, but he was cool enough. I think you just go through that list and then go through all the players and then find a player that, like, oh, I like that guy. And then type into your YouTube, said player highlights. And then just start watching highlights and see if it jogs your memory, if you find his play exciting, if it's cool. And then take that guy and go look him up in the sets and see what kind of sets he's in. Like, look him up in all the different, there's the early 90s sets, like the Beam teams and the, all that stuff. Look up all the way down to 99 to 2000, and then go into Topps Chrome if he was playing at that point, and have some fun. Like, have some fun collecting cards, putting together a cool little PC of a player, and then and this is what I did, start connecting with other collectors of that player. There's always a few of them out there. And then you start learning way more about the cards that they're in, all the stuff. And that is just, to me, one of the most exciting and thrilling parts of the hobby. because you get to learn about the sets, you get to learn about a player, you get to learn about, or you get to know other collectors, you get to touch base with other collectors and interface with them and get to know them. You learn more about the hobby. It's really, really cool exercise. And there's a little less risk. Now, yeah, if you're buying a player that's not heavily collected, yeah, you're running a risk of spending money on cards that maybe people won't want in the future. But if you get the right sets, the right inserts, there's always going to be set collectors out there that are collecting a set, a parallel set, an insert set. So you'll always have that, right? So there's some backstop there. But ultimately, if you're just having fun, that's great. Have fun with it. And that's a great way to have fun without breaking the bank.
All right, so let's check and see how this looks. I just looked up the Wembanyama Silver Prism PSA 10. There's some that have sold. Oh, man, these aren't recent sales, though. Dang it. I'm trying to see if there's a very recent sale. I can't find a very recent sale. I'll have to check some of the – hold on, let me look it up.
That wouldn't be selling right now. I think people are going to sell because they're like, well, I better beat someone, and that's going to have a cascading effect. I got to get there before someone else does. And
$784 for a PSA 10 Wemby. The next episode that we have, whether that's in a week or 2 weeks, what will it be? What do you have a prediction? And so 780 is approximately where it sits now after the news. Do you have a prediction where that card will be on our, and then we'll share on the next episode?
It's sub 500.
Sub 500. Okay. I'm going to say there's going to be some more diamond hands. I'm going to say 600 average sales.
Okay.
Well, it'll probably be like $180. No. Hey, if it's $180, I'm grabbing a couple.
I mean, yeah, why not? You can take a shot down there, right? That's yeah. It's the folks that have spent considerable amount. And if you're spending a lot, and you got to remember too, if you're spending a lot of money on some of these cards that are not Prism, you're buying unlicensed cards to boot. So he really has to perform for those cards to go, right? There's just a lot of risk in him particularly. I think if you're going to want to try to play the prospect game, wait till Topps gets all the licensing, because I bet you they're going to put out some pretty cool products and everybody's going to be excited about it. They're going to bring back, some of these cool sets that, they used to have. And there's like the cool insert, like I think it's an insert Kickstart. Topps had it for a while. It's a cool basketball insert. They'll probably look at something like that and bring that back and make it like numbered and something cool. I mean, there's all these cool things you can do to kind of wrap into the nostalgia of the 90s or the early 2000s with, Topps and now having the licenses and reproducing some cool sets. Now the retro sets never really always perform very well, but I think with all the new players, it'll be kind of fun, right? It kind of reintroduces the modern with what was so great about the past. There'll be opportunities, I think, if that happens. But for right now, yeah, I would not be buying him. Just the unlicensed stuff just bothers me if you want an auto. And
yeah, this kind of reminds me like this whole like card, the card manufacturers remind me of like Don King in the 80s with like, yeah, as a boxing promoter, it's like, we've got the new heavyweight champion and now it's like Victor Wembanyama. But then like if things go sideways for Wembanyama, like next year it's going to be, and now we've got Cooper Flag at the top of the league. Like every year it's like somebody, it's like Jaden Daniels, for football. If he sucks next year, then it's like, we got Shedeur Sanders. It's going to be all about the next guy. And it kind of just reminds me of that. It's like every year it's going to be the next hyped draft class, of guys, whoever that is.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they make money, right? I mean, and they get everybody excited about it. But here's the thing, and it's all built on this Patrick Mahomes theory, right? It's built on the Tom Brady. You had his cards before he became somebody and before the hobby took off. And those kind of success stories are what drive everybody to do this, because they go, I want to be the first one in on some of these, on a guy. The problem is it's never that guy. No, it's the guy people aren't buying. That's pretty inexpensive.
It's Spencer Rattler. It's literally like, it'd be like if Spencer Rattler won 7 titles, just rattled off 7 titles. That's Tom Brady.
Right. So it's like the cards have room to grow and realize that gain and potential. When you're buying a card that's already got everything baked in, it has nowhere to go but down in some cases. So it's not really prospecting. You're going, okay, I'm going to buy this card. It's pricing in a lot of stuff. And I think he has to be generational and then be retired for 10 years before I can actually see a gain on this thing. And that's what it feels like to me. So that's what's always kind of turned me off to the whole thing, prospecting.
All right. Well, we just glossed over the 30-minute
mark.
You're
spinning. You're spinning in circles there, buddy.
Oh,
I don't know if you're still here or if it's just me, but I guess it's just me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Having trouble connecting. Huh.
I can hear you just fine. I guess
I lost you. Or maybe we're still going. It's just me.
I'm leaving this in the episode.
Oh, it's still recording. So it is just me. All right.
Leaving this in the
well,
episode.
Since we have Dustin trying to find his way back, I guess I'll talk. What do you guys all think in the comments? Like, do you think it's worth investing money or spending money, a lot of money on a player that hasn't really done anything yet? It's just all hype, or maybe has shown some promise or shown some skills and had a successful first season or rookie season or whatever, and now you want to spend money? I mean, or do you like to see 3 or 4 years baked in before you actually want to buy a current modern player? I would think you'd want to wait a little bit. But people love the thrill of the chase and the thrill of getting it right and getting in early. So I totally understand that sentiment, but I think it'd be wise to wait. And hey, maybe just maybe save that money and do something else with it. There, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Were you just gone? Was I spinning or you were just gone?
It was fine for me the entire time.
You can hear me talking the whole time?
The whole time. And I said, actually, I'm keeping all this in the episode. So it was almost like I turned into like Patrick Swayze and Ghost or whatever. Like I was a ghost for a little bit. But on the recording, I'm curious to see if it actually works. You know, like if it worked or if I did like, you know, if it's like screwed up on the recording.
Well, yeah, because it just had a black screen where it was like circle going. And I'm like, okay, well, it looks the recording is still going. So I'll just keep going. Maybe he can still hear me, but I can't hear him. But maybe that's what everybody would see. But I mean, it makes for fun. I mean, I'm just kind of talking.
I think that we'll wrap there. I think this is a good moment. This was a strong episode, DPZ. I think we hit like the major points that we wanted to hit. So thank you for parking on the highway and doing this episode.
I'm in a parking lot, man. I'm not on the side of the freeway, bro. No, I'm not that reckless. No, I pull.
DPC's broken down on the side of the road and decided to record.
Yeah, I'm not gonna worry about fixing the issue. I'm gonna course card contests. That's normally the first thing that pops in my mind. Where my priorities are at.
Yeah. Hey, I'm waiting for a tow truck. Let's do an episode real quick.
Yeah, let's do that. Why not? No, good stuff, man. I guess we'll comment below, everybody. You're really great at that. I love all the comments. A lot of fun conversations that we can have. And this is an interesting topic. I honestly think that I'd be steering clear of all that stuff. But if you want to do it, great. Just be cautious and know full well what you're getting yourself into.
All right, guys. We will see you next time. Have a good weekend.
Take care.